Hello people, and welcome back to episode 3 of the Build Guide 2. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for all the support last week when we worked on our little farm area here. A really fun way to piece together some generic industry and your starting service assets to create a much more sort of aesthetically pleasing and appropriate industrial area, I think, for the start of the city. This farm settles in really nicely. So thank you indeed for all the kind comments and support. And indeed, speaking of the comments, we do have some things to address. So I asked you guys what you wanted the city to be called, and by far and away the most upvoted comment was Orchid Bay, which we are going to go for as a suggestion from Philip Brady, so thank you so much, Philip. And we're going for Orchid Bay because they are the plant that vanilla is derived from, which seems appropriate for a vanilla series, right? So we'll have Orchid Bay as the name for our city. Thank you so much for that. Second up, we've also had a comment as well from Hark the Herald Angel, who says the city should be called Two Church, named after the two churches. I didn't want to name the city after it, but what we have done is named the district and this first town as Two Church. So of course we have our two churches, both of which famously hate each other. And you know, perhaps they do kind of petty church things. Maybe they switch their red wine out for white wine and the bread for crackers. So when they come to have their little feast, rather than bread and red wine, they're left with white wine and Rivita, for example, okay? Sort of petty church things like that. So thank you for all support on the lore. Glad you guys enjoyed the two churches. And then we also had Black Sheenan let us know that indeed a little bit of light action would be really nice alongside our trees on the main road. Because at nighttime it's a little bit dark, so we're going to go for an 18-meter fill. So now when we look at our nighttime view, we should have this cute little illuminated pattern during the night time, which is great, okay? It really sits as a little bit of that extra landscaping, doesn't it? So great idea. Thank you so much for... I really do appreciate all the comments, guys. There has been so many of them, and it's nice to see so many new people arriving on the channel as well. About 500 new subscribers in 2 days, which is crazy, really crazy. So welcome in everyone. I hope you're enjoying the content and indeed the massive back catalogue of stuff for you to go through. However, in today's episode, I'd like to carry on expanding the road network. And because I want this city to be so ingrained with public transport and its planning, now feels like a good time in episode 3 to form our first transport hub around our town centre. So this town centre is going to be trams and buses. We're going to talk over some really fun designs today that we can do with all the networks that we have available to us now. Lots of detailing, some unique buildings, commercial and sort of general service assets to construct the idea and theme of a town centre in the build guide for the first time. But lots of fun. Let's have a little look at some public transport in Vanilla City Skylines, shall we? So let's start the thought process here from the end of our current one-way configuration. So when I'm kind of building grander plazas or sort of, you know, general sort of larger centres of commerce and I guess metropolitan areas, I guess is the phrase here, just sort of a larger town centre, like a larger, more obvious build. I find it very useful to stick into increments of 10, especially when you're sort of planning out frames. So I'm going to come out with 20 here, and then I want to do another 20, and then another 20 off the back of that. So therefore I know that I have 60 units in total here with the one-way network, and this just now allows me to divide it up much easier to create sort of a sense of planning and scale. So I'm going to measure 20 tiles, and then I'm going to create the node there. And then I also want to do the same thing here again as well. I'm going to measure 20 tiles, there we go. So that's going to give me the halfway point between two. And we can now draw these roads up and down so we can mark out exactly where halfway is sat along this point over here. Alright, so this is going to be really cool. So we're going to allow the one-way system in town to flow through the town centre and eventually into downtown Orchid Bay somewhere over there. But we're obviously a long way from that yet, but we can start to plan things out at least for right now. So let's also bring it down here. So I think there's quite a cool way that we can almost respect this landmass, I think is the way to say it here, isn't it? So let's do this road out. We'll do a 10 curve. We want to maybe go perhaps a little bit shorter than that. I'm just sort of trying to egg it up. I think I'll maybe go a little bit shorter. Let's do 20 units. And then we'll do a 10 curve. And again, because we're working in perfect measurements of 10, I know that 2 more perfect 10 curves are going to bring me back perfectly into this node, which means we have perfect zoning. And everything's going to be nice and happy and geometric, which is always a fun theme to bring into a build. So let's just expand this up here now as well. I know that another 20 here will bring me back in. And then I can use sort of existing frames around here now to plan out some new suburban road frame, because we do need a new district today. We need some more residential demand. We'll also get some going over here as well as our suburb slowly expands up. I hope for those that are playing along, you are noticing a difference in the play style of just slowing down and sort of adding personality into little areas. See, there's a lot more detail to be done here when we come to work on our tram waterfront, and this area over here, probably next episode we'll do that. Okay, but alright, this is turning into something at the minute, isn't it? It's not quite there yet, but of course we've only just started. So, the main thing here I want to talk about is public transport. This is going to be a real key theme for me. So, I know that I want some pedestrian roads. Let's find out what we need to do to unlock a pedestrian road. We need to place a service point, I think, for which we need to paint out a pedestrian area as well. Now, I do want to use pedestrian roads in this area, so we're going to keep this pedestrian area in. Let's go for the service point there, small pedestrian area service point. That's the one that we want. There we go, and then that unlocks all of our roads for us. So, in the main centre here, we're obviously going to have our cars pass in. We'll also have some detail and opportunities in the middle. Then I want the trams to sit in this space here, and then I'd like the buses to stop over the road in this space. So let's plan out the bus terminal. So let's grab a road first of all, and then we'll create a frame for the bus terminal to sit in. Why don't we go for about there? That should be okay. I can always change it if need be. So I'm going to use the highway roads here to use the bus-only express ramps. Because I'd actually like to use this as a little sort of entry point and service point for the roads. And then at that point, obviously we can't add stops to these because they don't have zoning. But I'm thinking if we use, let's say, cobblestone maybe, we can use the bus-only lanes to form the stops, which I think would be really cool. So there's something we can do here. We can draw them straight up, which is okay, or we can draw them on an angle, which is okay, but there's also something a little different we can do. If we draw up here and then find this node snap point, move one further along it and then draw in a bit of road and then delete that road, we're going to create a node at this section here. Okay, you can see where the node has come in, where the lines break. If we then come back to this one and then move it across ever so slightly, you'll see how it doesn't go totally straight and it's not on a perfect sort of snapped angle. It's almost got like a little kind of wiggle in it. It's a nice little way of just sort of adding in a little bit of curvature into the roads if you want maybe a slightly different angle. It's a pretty fun way of doing things. Again, we can see here how it snaps perfectly. But if we want to add in that secondary node, we draw down the road one, come back up, and then slowly connect to it, and then you'll see how it just bends out like that. Okay, so that's what we want to do each time. And then what this will do for us is just create a little sort of custom bus plaza that we can fill with detailing. Of course, actually fill it with bus lines as well would be helpful, so people can come and use them. But it's a nice little aesthetic, and it's going to give us something a bit fun. Of course, you can just place a pre-built bus station if you have them. We're not quite at the milestone for them yet. Is the next one up for us. But for right now, that's going to do me a really fun little custom bus plaza. Okay, that's going to sit nicely over here. Speaking of buses, we do want a bus depot. So there's a couple of options. We can get the regular one or the biofuel one. I'm just going to get the regular one because I want to use bus models that aren't biofuel. So we're going to have this one next to our service point. Seems a pretty sensible area, doesn't it? Of course, there's not going to be vast amounts of vehicles coming out of this, only every time we generate a new bus line, which is going to be okay. So I'm happy with the bus functionality there, right? This is going to be cool. Let's cross the road now and have a look at the trams. So we have a whole bunch of new tram roads now. And I'd like to bring trams down this street and into the starting suburb by the churches and the high school. Ideally, we will see how that goes though. So let's have a look at what's going to happen here. So I'd like some pedestrian roads definitely here. So let's go for cobblestone pedestrian tram road. And we're going to bring this through here. Okay, so we will have the tram run parallel with the one-way network for a little bit, because that's going to give us a really cool sort of layered network aesthetic that will pay off in the long run. So we'll look forward to that. I also don't want it to connect here. I'd like it to now cross the road. Okay, and then we'll connect in there. And then this can come down. But as it comes into this area, I don't want it to be at the pedestrian road immediately. I'd like it to come into some tram-only road, which is this one here. And we're going to draw this down by 390 either side. I want to use the one-way tram tracks here because we don't really use this network. It tends to be fairly neglected. So I'm going to throw in a little one-way tram track here. Right, that's going to be wonderful. And then we'll also do a little measurement of 135 out of these corners. And then that allows us to have the one-way network here. And we can now see how we would complete a tram loop through here. It sort of separates its stop out a little bit. You can absolutely just use the cobblestone ones for this, which I think I am also going to do. Because again, it's just sort of network variation, which can be really powerful in creating sort of a different look and aesthetic for the city. So I'm going to be using the cobblestone street as well here, and I'd like this to run really close, right up next to that one. Okay, and I can now plan in a tram line that is going to run down towards my waterfront, for which again I want to use the tram only roads. When it's not quite in a sort of grandiose area, I don't really want to use the tram pedestrian roads. I only really want to use those when we're sort of having stops or they pass through a town centre, or we're not doing sort of one-way network stuff like this. But yeah, we'll just sort of cover the process as we get closer to it, I think. Cool, this isn't looking too bad right now. We're starting to get all this hooked in. Let's plan in where this road is going to go. So we could use one of these new roads, the 4-lane road with tram tracks, or we could separate the network out onto its own sort of frontage here against the water, which gives us some much nicer park opportunities, I think. So if we were to run the network parallel with the current road, it really bulks it out, doesn't it? Of course, we're going to have commercial set up against here as well when we come to build our waterfront and castle area. Yeah, we've had some really nice suggestions on the castle as well. So thank you for all of those. We'll definitely come out and build here at some point. I think I'm on board with that, right? I definitely want that aesthetic of a sort of tram road running parallel. We could even give it the breathing room if we want. You could possibly go for, what's that, leaving one tile between the road and the network. You get a little bit of detailing room in there as well then. It's probably more appropriate, isn't it? So I think we'll end up going for that one. But it's always nice to test out different ideas, you know, if you want to go right up against the road. That does give a very cool aesthetic. It really kind of stacks the networks, I guess, is the way to describe it. You get a nice little layer. But I'm happy with the path between, or the tile between, because it will give us room to place things like pathways, which is always helpful for walkability and stuff. Cool, so just using the grid snap and the curve tools here to meet up all these networks together. So one tram is going to flow all the way down here. At this point I would like it to come into the town centre, so we will need a tram road. Let's go ahead and find one of those. Why don't we see what we have? Choose one of the new ones. 4-lane road with tram tracks and trees. That sounds pretty sensible to me. So we'll upgrade this one here. And then let's use one of those small tram roads this way. And then we'll create a tram loop around the church and the school. It's a nice little sort of community hub for the trams to stop at, isn't it? And of course, you've got these tram tracks with the roads in the middle now. And the new roads, they look really cool. Fantastic. And of course, we actually want to place the tram depot itself. Let's not forget about that. So where are you going to go? It looks like there's actually a happy little connection to be made. There, is there? Yes, there is. That is perfect. And then we can probably include the tram depot as part of the overarching town centre design, because it's a really nice building. I actually love the tram depot. Okay, it's very loud, of course. You don't want to place this near residential, but you can get away with it here. Cool. So I think that's all right. We can definitely see now where things need to be upgraded into tram system, so all of our lines can be fed, which we can probably use regular tram road for that. So let's bring it all down. Okay, so I think I'm much happy with this tram configuration right here. And then to round it off, because I kind of want 3 sort of tram lines converging at this central plaza with the buses, I'd like to see if we can maybe bring this one here into a one-way loop. So I'm going to change the one-way road into tram tracks. It can then leave this area and start serving the suburb that will eventually lie here, before it returns down this road to come through here, through the buses, across the road at this point, maintaining the one-way network. Actually looks like that might benefit from having it redrawn. Looks like there's an extra node in there where there doesn't need to be one. There we go. and then it can come down here onto a pedestrian road. And then I think all the roads around this now I would actually like to pedestrianize rather than having them as the road on this side like that. And I guess we might as well have this as pedestrian too. We can kind of turn this into a park here. Let's definitely upgrade that tree as well. Maybe something like a Leiden. Something a little bit more tasteful maybe. Cool. So that's the general configuration. Of course, we need to give tram-only connections into this one, which can probably be provided. And then we'll get that tram road and upgrade that into the one-way tram network so it can flow. Wonderful. Okay, so that is my final tram and bus configuration. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this as a general rule of thumb. And it's going to give us some nice opportunities to sort of really detail this area up and bring it lots of personality and life. Really fun playing with so many unique vanilla networks in the base game now, of course. It's just, yeah, lots and lots of fun. So I'm happy with the configurations. I'm going to go ahead now and get everyone flowing around. So of course these guys are going to want water to their respective vehicle depots. So let's do that. And then we'll start with the buses. So let's go ahead and grab a bus line. We'll have one here. Now, I kind of want a school bus route running, just for the aesthetic of it. So I'm going to run this through the suburb. It's going to come down here. Might even be a point of turning this into a bus-only road if a lot of buses are going to come down this way. I guess we'll see. Yeah, so I want you to stop outside the school, and then you can make your way through the suburb before coming down again to stop outside this school with the trams again. So we're getting that public transport convergence. And then come back up and serve the suburb. This is going to make everyone tremendously happy. And then come back into the stop. We will await for the bus to come out here. There we go. Let's grab it. We'll change the model to a school bus. And that's going to be great. There we go. So now we'll see them slowly stack up there. That's going to be wonderful. You guys want a little bit of power, do you? Okay. Let's go ahead and make sure you jump through. You okay? Yes. There we go. Cool. Everyone's happy. Alright, so let's do another bus line now. Let's go ahead and grab the next stop over here. And I imagine I want this one to come down here at some point. And we're going to let this one come down to the industrial area. Of course, where it can stop and serve a few people. The roundabout is actually a good point for it to turn around. So I think we'll do that. Stop here outside the diner. And then loop back around. Or actually we could take it through the farm. We could actually have the farm stop here. Why don't we do that instead, actually? So stop in the farm and then come down the middle of it to stop outside the front of the farm again before you make your way back to the bus terminal. So this is just like a little industrial service loop. This is going to take people from the suburb and converge with the trams and the industry. So again, I want this bus model to sort of reflect the theme of its line. So if it's going through an industrial area, why don't we go for this sort of crappy looking low capacity 25 capacity bus? We'll see how this goes. Of course, they all need to stagger on the line, so don't worry about any initial sort of bus backlog. They will eventually clear as to where they need to go. And this is just super flexible now, right? I've got room for, what, 1, 2, and then 4 more stops over here. So 6 more stops I can get into this space for the bus lines as and when we need them. But we don't need too many more right now. We're serving this suburb with a little bus route, which is very appropriate, isn't it? Love the aesthetic of the buses stopping outside the school here. That's really cool. Hopefully we can see one outside the high school as well. Are they waiting for the bus? Yes, they are. Cool. But I love that, though. The aesthetic of buses flowing outside of a school is tremendously exciting. Okay, but trams are the real meat and potatoes, right? This is why we are all here, after all. Cool. So let's create a point for the trams to turn around. Obviously, of course, they don't really go anywhere, so we're just going to need to create a really small turning circle from them that we can, of course, just amend and break once we decide what's going to flow over here. I'd also like to plan in some train stations as well. And because we don't have access to them yet, and I know that I want another parallel line here, because again, I always like to separate my intercity and internal train lines. You always hit train traffic if you mix and match them. So I'm just going to draw in a little dirt road frame next to my rail line, so I know that I want that to become rail as soon as I've unlocked it, so we can plan that in. And then we'll plan in a train station here as well, which of course will continue to converge with all of this local nearby public transport as well. But we need 9k population to get to that yet, and we're not quite there. Cool, but the rest of the city's okay. No one's complaining. Everyone's all right. Wonderful. And we now have a completed loop to run this through. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we finally have a system that I'm happy with for the trams. I'll give you a brief bird's eye view of what's happened here. So I was playing with tram-only roads, pedestrian roads, and one-way networks here as well, with some bus-only networks. So it's a pretty kind of intricate system here we've got for a transport hub, but I'm hoping it's going to work really well. So let's set up our first tram line. So I'd like this one to be running down toward the river. So we'll stop it at several places along the waterfront, of course, which won't be mega busy right now, but eventually they will be. Then we actually don't need to stop there again. Let's stop again on the road just as we come into town. And then we'll come around the bus stop here. Where do we want to go? And then it could actually turn around here, but eventually, of course, it's going to go down here and off into the rest of the city. So we'll do that. So I really want to kind of treat this as some sort of like major DLR tram system that flows right through the heart of the city and continues to do so as this area grows up. It should lead to some really cool designs. I hope as all these networks come together. Cool, so let's wait for that tram line to come out, and then we'll change the model, of course. Courtesy of the free update, we've now got loads of tram models, which is just amazing. So why don't we go for this cute little 72 capacity one? I don't want anything major right now. If this tram line gets busier, then we can change it up. Let's also give it a different colour as well. Why don't we go for a nice red tram, right? We never go for a red line, do we? Cool, so let's just see how they move around this little system now. This is going to be so much fun to detail, everyone. This is going to be, yeah, a really fun build. I love detailing public transport. It's really makes a difference to the city when you really factor these networks in from the start. And this is a cute little transport configuration as well. I'm happy with this one. Yes, ignore them turning around. I know the tram gang will be furious with the angle of this curve. I know it's insane, but please just bear with it, okay? They will sort themselves out eventually. So that's cool. And then the secondary tram, which at the minute doesn't really go anywhere, will actually feed up through here into the town centre and then back down onto its tram road. And I guess we could actually remove the one-way functionality off the tram roads here and loop another one anti-clockwise. That's a little bit overkill for what I need for right now, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, we'll just sort of see what happens with it. Just noticed you sort of did a weird little turnaround thing then, didn't you? Well, they just come back to this way. I don't think, yeah, that's okay. I don't mind that happening, I don't think. Cool. And then, of course, this tram as well, we want to change its model. Let's go for the 65 one here, so we're getting little variations. Let's go for a very blue tram to sort of contrast the red one. This is just like the little streetcar number, isn't it? I think this is going to be quite nice moving around the town centre. Tremendous. So usually I would advocate against putting nodes together this close. It's never a good idea. The AI doesn't really behave too well when you do this, so 9 times out of 10 you should avoid having nodes this closely packed together, but because it's pedestrian and it's feeding out of a depot, I'm a little more happy to do it, okay? So again, you just sort of learn to know when and when not to use it. Cool, so now let's start placing some assets in the town centre itself. I would actually like to place in some taxis. So we're going to place down a taxi depot. This is a perfect asset for our industrial area, isn't it? A little bit of fencing on it and some industrial vibes around the back. Really happy with this to sit here. But what that does unlock for us is the taxi stands. Now taxis, in my opinion, are pretty useless in City Skylines. They just sort of don't really tend to do what they should. I don't know, maybe it's just my personal experience of them, but I'm going to place 3 in a row here, okay? If you're wondering where taxis do come from, they are with the After Dark DLC, but of course you guys will have the little animated thing up on screen to tell you what's what. Okay, so there's already a real strong theme of centralization developing here, isn't there? And I think this is going to be quite fun to respect as we go forward. Let's have a look at a unit building. Let's come into our European ones, and I think I know the asset I want to sit here. This is going to be City Hall, right? And again, it happens to sit centrally. And it's got a little statue and fountains at the front, which is very appropriate for what I want to happen in this area. Okay, and we're going to start drawing lots of people to this area now as well, of course. That's great. That's wonderful. I'm happy with that. Let's turn our attention to what's going on over this way. Again, I think a statue. Let's have a look at our unique buildings. Why don't we go for a Statue of Wealth? Good work here. I think I'd rather have the Statue of Wealth in a wealthy area, though. How about the Statue of Shopping? Oh, it sits centrally again. We can see now where we're getting the warning for pedestrian areas. So we do need to bring this over. If you are missing the plazas and promenades DLC, it's definitely one of the better ones, I think. I just love having pedestrian roads. It makes an enormous difference to any build, pretty much. Okay, so I want to make sure that all this is painted up. You don't want to make your pedestrian areas too big, because they are very much based on the size of the area. The bigger it is, then the more upkeep it pays, and they are expensive in the vanilla game, so do be careful with them if you are indeed going to be using them. So let's wrap this design up now with some grass. This is going to be good. Let's bring it around the bottom. That fits perfectly. And again, is there an asset now here just waiting to be placed? I don't have a look at a library. We actually do need another elementary school. Yeah, we do. We need another elementary school soon. Today's episode even. But a public library, are you going to sit in the middle? Oh, yes you are. Goodness gracious. That's all absolutely perfect centralization, isn't it? So geometry and symmetry can be two elements of a build that make an enormous difference to the final product. I think if you start to do it everywhere and all the time, it becomes very obvious that's what you're doing, and it kind of sort of ruins the realism a little bit. But I think for a town centre where definitely sight lines would have been factored in, perhaps also have some historical purpose, I'm very much enjoying this sort of town centre configuration, right? That's really fun. And we've also got what looks to be a bunch of spaces either side here, so let's connect our roads together. And then if we jump into the world of plazas and promenades, hopefully we can just pop down some plazas here. Let's get some of these across the road ones in as well. They're going to fit perfectly there, aren't they? So we'll get an ice cream one in. So these are all plazas and promenades. Plazas, again, links down to Instant Gaming below if you're missing any content that we're using in this series. Super cheap, and it does help support the channel, so thank you very much. We do also need more power. At this point, I'm inclined to place down another station because we're going to need it. But again, I think what we're going to do as we open this tile out here, we're going to do another little industrial sort of mini build. Again, just to help service and hold these service assets in a more sort of aesthetically pleasing manner in vanilla. Okay, so we'll make another little industrial service area down here and put another power plant in it. But for right now, that's going to have to do me. Okay, wonderful. Fantastic. So it looks like there's some more plazas as well. Maybe we can go for a couple of small fountain numbers directly out front here. Is that going to be fun? I think so. Looks like it could be. I'm pretty happy with that, I think. Cool. See what other things we have as well. I'm pretty sure the unique plaza that came with the Korea stuff is also going to fit here. The human chirper, isn't it? Oh god. There is something so incredibly unnatural about that, isn't there? Human chirper is... well, it shouldn't exist. I think, is it? The tall blue bird man is not something that we asked for. But there it is. It's an experience, isn't it? Human chirper, everyone. Welcome to the channel. Cool. Okay, I'm happy with this. So we could even sort of pop these over by a tile each. And then create a bit of room for an elevated pathway to take shape here. It might be a little bit of overkill, and it could kind of hurt our final symmetry design. But it's definitely a possibility if we want people to be crossing over the road. Maybe fill it down here as well. Let's just see how we feel about a general sort of elevated skywalk here, because the less sims we can have moving across these roads, especially in an area that's going to be this busy, the better, really. So if we can get them to cross the road via the bridge, that's better. So let's see if we can do this. Do you just want to come straight down here? You can't really do that. I guess we could do. We maybe want to straighten this off. It would keep it all symmetrical, wouldn't it? I guess it still comes across the junction pretty impressively, doesn't it? And then it does give us that room for symmetry either side with the pathway, which I think is more important. For me, anyway. Everyone's opinion will differ. Okay, but it's all about keeping people off of the pedestrian road crosswalks on the road and having them use the pathway instead. We'll see how that works out, okay? I think we'll just sort of wait and see what happens with it. I want to see if the AI picks that up. There's a lot of people walking already. Interesting to see, isn't it, how they would prefer to walk on a pedestrian street rather than just heading down the road, even though it technically is the longer way around. Interesting to see, everyone. Cool, but it's happening. Let's come into our industry now. So there's a whole collection of town centre assets that work really nicely in a town centre. And the post office from the Industries DLC is one of those. Post is a pretty wet mechanic. It's not massively important, but you can get involved with it if you want to. But I'm much more interested in how the asset looks, and that for me sits on the corner perfectly, doesn't it? I'm really happy with that. Cool, so now we can just match our demands. Let's have a little look at some commercial zoning. Definitely want lots of commercial space in here. And then scan through your assets. You could even include a school as part of the main sort of complex if you wanted to. I'm sure an elementary school would work really nicely here. Maybe one of the other ones if you wanted to. You could go for another community school that sits as part of the complex there. Don't think I'm overly against it. It's alright, it might not be the best ever placement of one, but it'll do for right now. Then let's go for some more assets. I think a little bit of child healthcare centre would be nice there. A little daycare in the town centre. And then parks, plazas, assets, anything that you like. Carousel parks work really nicely on a corner if you can find a place to squeeze them in. Just because you get that kind of flush concrete texture off the pavement, which is very hard to achieve in vanilla, of course. And then I think a little bit of zoning around the back of these here should be tasteful. We can maybe even bring in a pathway there for a little bit of poor man's surface painter. Seems a little bit pointless though, actually. Cool. So we'll let these grow up, of course. Please keep an eye on what is allowed to grow here. I'm happy with that one, but I want this one to change. A little laundromat there, I think. Yep. I'm happy for a laundromat to be a part of my town centre. This is great. This is where just all the fun comes from. This is just slowly piecing together these areas. You know, deciding what isn't a part of it, you know, finding a new asset in all these options that you've got available now. It's so much fun. It's just, you know, so many possibilities and variations of design here. It's really special. See there where he's accidentally spawned on the pedestrian road, so I'll just extend my district out so he gets served. There we go. Cool, and then we could keep that theme going if we wanted sort of businesses to face out onto this pedestrian road here. That would be quite nice, I think. With the town hall itself, I can definitely envision a very rigid vanilla pathway pattern. Maybe even go for park pathway. Yeah, I think we will. And then just have these run all around the back of the town centre. And then a little bit of wild hedge lining from the content creator trees, exactly what we've done with the roads over here, and will work really nicely in and around all these path networks that hold the town centre. And then again, we can place statues in here, come our detail in time lapse, and sort of create a little garden around the city hall for the town centre to revolve around, if you like. Okay, and then of course all these spaces here, trees, detailing, pathways, etc. I think an amusement park pathway actually might be quite nice in the middle of this section here, because that little pop of red almost might just highlight the stop a little bit more. We could even go for one with trees, and then we could upgrade those trees into something nicer. Maybe, what do we have available? Maybe one of those palms, play into our centralization. Yes, it does. It does indeed, doesn't it? That's really cool. It's a little pathway there. It's kind of pointless, of course, but they will actually walk back and two across it. But yeah, it's just a nice little pop of colour in amongst all that grey to highlight the fact that it is a tram stop. Okay, I think I can get on board with it. It's a really fun transport hub, this one. There's lots of people moving about already, which is great. People taking the school bus too, fantastic. Okay everyone, here is a prime example of why I'm always telling you to be careful with your assets. See how much that hurts the build? That horrible crap vanilla one over there. Okay, see how much better this one looks down here, okay? Curated, chosen assets that are appropriate for my theme. This is great. This one over here, not so much. So it's why we historicalize and we be careful with what comes in. Here's our one-way system finally getting some flow now. Interesting that there's a lot of people coming here. I don't really want that to happen in all honesty. So there's a couple of ways we can fix this. Of course we could remove the connection, but I don't really want to because there's buses using it. or we can make this one a high speed option so the AI thinks it's faster, which it technically will be, or we can make this bus access only, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use this two-way bus only expressway, and this will now sit here. So now only my buses that are using this road, which we'll hopefully see one, there we go, there's the one that's heading to the industrial area. These guys are now only allowed to use this. If you are a pedestrian car, you are not allowed to use the bus access roads, and you must carry on down here. Okay? Tremendous. Did just see another bus come out of the depot there. Yes, we're also getting worker demands here now as well. We definitely need some more workers in the city. We have enormous residential demand, so let's go ahead and get some of this zoned up over here. We should have a random historical one there for some reason. I don't know what that one was. But yeah, so let's just make sure we keep zoning up. Right. Keep those houses coming in. Cool. I also want to do a little bit of green cities housing over here as well. We might do that in a second. Good, but if we get some abandoning for no workers, don't worry. It will eventually sort of stabilise out once you've zoned up a bit of residential. There we go. That's a much more appropriate asset for me. Thank you very much. Same with you as well. You're actually quite tasteful. You actually work really nicely next to the bus depot, don't you? That's a very nice little aesthetic there, isn't it? Happy days. So you see how we're getting this parking here? I don't really like this. There is a way we can fix this in the vanilla game now. If we use the 2-lane one-way roads with wide sidewalks, we can do it. Because it removes the parking space off of them. So we could just do that through this area because I don't really want people parking their cars here. And then the last thing I'd like to do here today before we move into a detailing time lapse is to come back onto all of our tools here. And I'd like to extend this current arterial system. And I'd like to see if we can mimic the curve of the sort of pedestrian roads there. Now that seems pretty mimic to me, I think. Yeah, I just want it to follow the curvature, okay? And then as it kind of does, I then want it to sort of snap back, then meander. I'm going to go parallel with this one. I'm eyeing eventually this up to cross the river, come through this area, and then into downtown. So this main river road actually maintains a connection into sort of the inner city of Orchard Bay. So we will prepare for that to happen eventually. And of course that's our tower boundary. We can't cross over there yet, but we will one day. Cool. Alright, everyone. So this feels like a good place for detailing time lapse. This episode's probably getting pretty long now. So I'm just going to detail up all these spaces with pallets we touched on before. Lots of trees and bushes. Props from the plazas and promenades DLC will also work very nicely here. And then just continue to pick and choose some more commercial assets to make up the town centre. Detail up the central square with various designs and whatnot. And then hopefully after that, we're going to come back to this really cool cohesive space, and I think I might just extend the town of Two Church up here a little bit, just because we've got pretty high residential demand at the minute, so I'm just going to fill this space here, I think, with a little bit more housing, but nothing too serious or crazy. Just a quick note, everyone, before the detailing time lapse, this is the first time ever in nearly 8 years of playing this game I have seen taxi stands actually have taxis waiting at them. Never ever seen it before. There we go. They do work. They will come and sit here and wait for customers. Who knew, right? They actually do come out. Right, let's get to detailing. Okay, everyone, let's have a detailing review. So during that time lapse, we actually hit the next milestone, which was Boomtown, which also gives us airport areas, which is kind of ridiculous. How do we unlock airports before trains in the vanilla game? That seems really stupid. What? That makes no sense at all. I had no idea that that was in the. Does that mean? So I'm getting kind of getting distracted here. Create an airport area. Yeah, well, we can create airport areas now, can we? Yes, we can. Apparently, we can get access to airports before trains. I had no idea that that followed that progression. But either way, what we have unlocked, which I'm keen to talk about next episode, is going to be a lot of the cycling stuff that comes with Busy Town, a population of 4,800. I definitely want to spend a bit of time talking about cycling and how we can establish kind of a strong cycle highway right at the start of the city. And keep that going, almost like you can imagine if you look at the sort of finished view of Orchard Bay here, sort of a very strong bike corridor that goes all the way through the city and serves as many neighbourhoods as possible. So next episode when we come to do, well, I'll say next episode, I think I've got so many plans for this city, just yeah, so many things. I'm really, really enjoying it. Yeah, I want to bring more nightlife and industry down this way. And then we'll connect onto the highway, and then we'll also do more nightlife down this way. And then I think a Green Cities neighbourhood here should be quite fun. And then we'll also pop that tile. Okay, but either way, back to the detailing review. In and around our tram stops there, which are now getting a little bit of use. We've got some little details here with some bench props, decals, and the grill and the sort, just general stuff from the Park Life props tab. Vanilla players will be familiar with this collection of props at this point. It's pretty much the only things we have to detail. And then we do also have some bushes and jacaranda patterns in here as well to match the plazas. And I love the way that the library sits here. I've also taken the liberty of naming this Library Park. Just simple but effective, and I think it's really nice to have sort of, this little green belt space here. And of course we'll develop something this side of it as we grow up. Definitely factoring in a train station as part of this wider overarching design. I think what we will eventually do is have this tram come and stop at the train station. I think is eventually how this will evolve, but we need to wait for trains, of course. But yeah, really happy with the plaza. Furthermore, filled in lots of space with the red amusement park pathway, and also upgraded the skywalks into amusement park pathway as well, just because of that red tinge really matches the sort of style of the plaza and the bus roads that are everywhere. So it's quite sort of appropriate and on theme, I think. More historical commercial along the main road here, just so we have that sort of town centre vibe. And perhaps some really nice asset generation, right? This is why it's worth being patient with what comes in, because if you get your props alignment, you're going to get this really cute corner of personality. That is impossible to achieve in the vanilla game because we can't place these fences without find it. And I just love it, right? Major difference, looks really cute and sits really nicely together now with this carousel. Included with the integration of the tram depot into the town centre as well. I really enjoy that. And traffic's fine. The nodes can always be a bit sketchy, but it's not a vastly busy area. And there's a lot of walking, so we don't have to worry too much about idiotic nodes. You definitely wouldn't put this in like a high density downtown area. This would lead to problems in that scenario. But for the most part, we're okay. And there was still some taxis waiting as well, but they've all moved on now. Then around the awful human chirper sign, it's just nice and busy here. And then in between all the bus stations, we've dropped in some fencing, which is from the Modern City Centre. No, Modern Mid-Century Content Creator Pack fencing, this one. With the little slits in it. And then some little gardens in there just to tie it all together. And then we've also got some commercial in here, a little ice dispensary thing. And as we come behind the town centre, which has actually been turned into a park life area. Now, I will spend a bit of time in this series talking about park life and how fun that can be. But for right now, I just wanted the general park life area in. And super simple, I've just put in 2 restrooms, some tree patterns onto the pathways, and then just simple hedge lining with a prop fountain in the middle. Really simple, quite minimalistic, but it's really effective when you want the unique building to draw the eye, really, rather than all the stuff around it. So really simplistic and effective. And you may have noticed during the detailing time lapse that we have animals spawning in here. There was a cougar a minute ago. Well, not a minute ago, probably like an hour ago now, but it then became a deer. So we've changed the name of the park here into the hunting grounds. Just because the animals keep spawning in. Now, usually you would expect the cougar to hunt the deer, but the cougar is missing and the deer remains. So, you know, perhaps there are some carnivorous deer in Orchard Bay. Okay, maybe we can tie that into the churches, maybe? Not sure. We'll leave it up to you guys again. More specific commercial placement, again, deciding what assets we want to be in. Just remember, I haven't made this one historical though. I was waiting for that one to change, and that's perfect now. And just look at all this really cute, sort of specifically chosen commercial all facing into this plaza now. Gives us that real town-centered sort of vibe. You know, if you live here and you want to come shopping, or out for a bit of lunch, maybe a cocktail at night into a wine bar or something, you definitely head down to the hunting grounds and Library Park over here, just to sort of, you know, enjoy the atmosphere of the city. And it's turned out really cutely. We kind of got some awkward spaces developing already. This space here is going to be part of our nightlife district, which will bring down the waterfront to the other highway exit. Probably next episode we'll do that. And then we'll talk about green cities and cycling, and also extend the tram network that is relatively short at the minute, just this little one here, which is getting a little bit of use. There's a few people on it, but of course everything will continue to get busier in this part of town, and we'll probably need to change the tram models at some point to hold many more people, just because, you know, it'll get busier, and that's really what we want. We want this to be a really busy sort of tram hub, and then we can do sort of a tram and train hub further down the road. And I really want to make sure that this main tram line that started here today is really kind of thought about as it flows into its eventual downtown sort of area with all the new networks. So it should be a ton of fun. But otherwise, guys, that is going to do it for today. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. If you've enjoyed, likes, comments and shares below really do help me out and bring more people to the channel. Equally as much if you haven't enjoyed it, then please feel free to leave me a dislike as well. A huge thank you and indeed welcome to all the new people arriving on the channel. It's so nice to have so many new people commenting. So yes, I'm glad you're enjoying the content. We do a lot of fun city stuff here. I really love this game. I'm glad that you guys seem to be finding so much enjoyment in the content. So thank you for all the engagement. I really do appreciate it. It helps me to grow. But otherwise, I'm really happy with this little town centre transport square. It's turned into a wonderful little space with a unique building, lots of parks and detailing. And I hope you agree, personality, that's what it's all about for me, isn't it? You know, crafting these little handcrafted spaces and piecing it all together, watching it grow, and then sort of sitting back and actually watching it move around. It's always incredibly satisfying. Please do hang around for some cinematics and get your ideas down in the comments below. But otherwise, I will shut up and leave it there. Let's thank you all so much for watching. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.